The morning sun gently filtered through the kitchen curtains, bathing the space in a warm, golden glow. Chicago was slowly awakening, and in a luxurious apartment in the city center, Amelia was preparing for a new day at work. Dressed in her impeccable white nurse's uniform, she moved with grace and efficiency as she made breakfast for herself and Christopher. Amelia always started her day with the same routine: brewing coffee, toasting bread, and frying eggs. Although her movements were mechanical, her mind was filled with thoughts about the hospital and the patients she would be caring for that day. The passion for her work shone in her eyes every morning. Christopher, on the other hand, sat at the dining table, hidden behind the pages of the financial newspaper. His upright posture and silk robe contrasted with the humility of their surroundings. As Amelia served the coffee, he didn't look up. "I have an important meeting today," he mumbled, absorbed in the figures and graphs that filled the pages. Amelia smiled, trying to start a conversation. "I'm going to have a long day today, but I'm excited. I love my work at the hospital, saving lives and renewing hope for so many families. It's truly rewarding." Christopher barely reacted. Without looking up from the newspaper, he replied indifferently, "We've already talked about this, Amelia. When we get married, you should consider quitting that job. My company is thriving, and you won't need to work anymore. You can devote yourself to the house and our future children." Amelia felt a knot forming in her stomach, but her resolve did not waver. With a firm voice, she replied, "Christopher, helping people is my passion. I don't want to, and I won't give that up. I've worked very hard to get to where I am." Christopher finally looked up, his expression cold and implacable. "Money is not a problem for us. You should start getting used to the idea of being the ideal housewife. Leave that kind of work for others. You don't need it." The conversation hung in the air, heavy with unresolved tension. Amelia finished her breakfast in silence, her thoughts buzzing with frustration and determination. Upon arriving at the hospital, Amelia headed to the staff room where she found her friend and colleague, Natalie. As she adjusted her badge on her uniform, she shared her concerns. "Christopher doesn't understand. He thinks money can buy happiness, but my work brings me true satisfaction. He's been telling me for months that when we get married, I'll have to become a housewife and quit my job." Natalie, holding a cup of coffee, offered a sympathetic smile. "You have to follow your heart, Amelia, but it's also important that Christopher sees the value of your work somehow." The day at the hospital passed quickly. Amelia moved from room to room, attending to patients with a blend of compassion and efficiency. Every grateful smile, every improvement in a patient's health reinforced her conviction. This was where she belonged, where she made a difference. Meanwhile, in the financial heart of Chicago, Christopher sat in his luxurious office, surrounded by glass walls that offered a panoramic view of the city. The place reflected his success: modern furniture, contemporary art, and an atmosphere of ruthless efficiency. Christopher was immersed in a meeting with his executive team, discussing strategies for the expansion of his company. "We need to secure this investment. We can't let our competitors get ahead of us," said Christopher, his voice firm and authoritative. The team members nodded, taking notes and adjusting their plans according to their leader's instructions. For Christopher, business was a constant battle for power and prestige. The meeting continued with a detailed analysis of figures and future projections. Christopher, with his charisma and determination, dominated the room. His decisions were swift and calculated, each word carefully chosen to maximize impact. He had no time for distractions, much less for understanding why Amelia clung to a job that, in his opinion, offered no tangible value. At the end of the meeting, Christopher retired to his office, closing the door behind him. He sank into his leather chair, allowing himself a moment of reflection. He knew Amelia was at the hospital, probably helping some patient, but he couldn't shake the feeling of frustration and bewilderment. Why does she insist on working when it's not necessary? He thought, drumming his fingers on the desk. That evening, when Christopher returned to the apartment, the tension was palpable. Amelia had arrived shortly before him and was in the kitchen, preparing a simple dinner. The silence between them was uncomfortable, each absorbed in their own thoughts. "Amelia, we need to talk," Christopher finally said, breaking the silence. Amelia turned to face him, setting aside the cooking utensils. "What is it, Christopher?" "I was thinking about what we talked about this morning. I really think you should consider quitting your job. We don't need the income, and you could focus on other things," he said, trying to maintain a calm tone. Amelia sighed, feeling the frustration begin to build. "Christopher, we've already had this conversation. My work is important to me. It's not about the money, it's about helping people, feeling like I'm doing something meaningful." "But you don't need to work," Christopher insisted, his tone firmer. "We could travel. You could take up a hobby. I don't understand why you're so attached to that hospital." "Because it's my passion," Amelia replied, a spark of anger in her eyes. "I can't just give up something I love." The argument escalated, with both raising their voices. Each word seemed to deepen the chasm between them. Christopher didn't understand the intrinsic value Amelia found in her work, and Amelia couldn't accept that Christopher was trying to impose a life on her that she didn't want. Finally, emotional exhaustion took over. Christopher retreated to his home office, slamming the door shut behind him. Amelia, tears in her eyes, sank onto the sofa, clutching a cushion and seeking solace in the loneliness of the living room. The next day, Amelia shared her concerns with Natalie during their break at the hospital. "I don't know how much more of this I can take, Natalie. Christopher doesn't understand how important my work is to me." Natalie patted her shoulder. "You have to follow your heart, Amelia. He'll see how much this means to you eventually. You just have to find a way to show him." Amelia nodded, although she wasn't so sure it would be possible. The gap between their worlds seemed insurmountable. Back at work, Amelia immersed herself in her duties, attending to each patient with the same care and dedication as always. Every moment at the hospital reminded her why she had chosen this career path. Here, she was strong and confident, a reassuring presence for those who needed it most. Christopher, on the other hand, continued with his relentless pace of meetings and business decisions. Each success in his career was a reminder of why he had chosen this path, but also a shadow that loomed over his relationship with Amelia. Tensions continued to mount in the following weeks, with every conversation about the future turning into a heated argument. Amelia knew she couldn't give in, but she also realized that Christopher was unwilling to understand her perspective. As their anniversary approached, Christopher decided to take drastic measures. He wanted to organize a special dinner to convince Amelia that her place was in the home, not at the hospital. On the night of the dinner, Amelia was excited. She believed that Christopher had finally understood how important her work was to her and that they were going to celebrate their love and commitment. She dressed with care, choosing an elegant yet simple dress that reflected her style and personality. When Christopher arrived home, he led her to a luxurious restaurant in the heart of Chicago, where a candlelit table adorned with flowers awaited them. During the first few minutes of the dinner, everything seemed perfect. They reminisced about happy memories and laughed together. Amelia began to think that maybe they had put their differences behind them. But as the waiter served dessert, Christopher's tone changed. "Amelia, I've been thinking a lot about our future," Christopher began, taking her hand. Amelia smiled at him, expecting to hear words of support. "I think it's time for you to consider quitting your job at the hospital. You don't need to work anymore. My company is doing very well, and you could dedicate yourself to our home and the children we'll have." Amelia felt a lump forming in her throat. She gently withdrew her hand and took a deep breath before responding. "Christopher, we've already talked about this. I love my job. I can't imagine my life without helping patients. Why can't you accept that?" Christopher frowned. "It's just not necessary, Amelia. We can have a comfortable and happy life without you having to work. You should think about what's best for us as a couple, for our future family." Amelia felt her frustration growing. "It's not just a job to me. It's my vocation, my passion. I can't just abandon it because you want me to. Why can't you see that?" The tension at the table was palpable. Christopher tried to soften his stance. "I just want the best for us, Amelia. I want you to have a peaceful life, without worries." Amelia shook her head. "You don't understand, Christopher. My work gives me purpose. It makes me feel alive and useful. If you really love me, you should support me in what I love doing." Christopher fell silent, unsure how to respond. The dinner, which had begun with laughter and hope, ended in an awkward silence. Amelia realized that the differences between them ran deeper than she had imagined. Christopher neither understood nor valued her dedication to nursing, and that hurt her deeply. Upon returning home, they both went to bed without another word. Amelia realized that they needed a solution, but she didn't know how to find one without giving up an essential part of herself. The relationship was at a critical point, and the uncertainty about their future together grew with each passing day. Weeks went by in a tense silence between Amelia and Christopher. The constant friction and unresolved conversations had brought them to a breaking point. Amelia, though committed to her work and her patients, couldn't help but feel a growing concern for the future of her relationship. One cold and grey morning, Christopher was getting ready for a crucial business meeting. The company was in full expansion, and this meeting could mean a major breakthrough. Christopher, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, adjusted his designer watch before heading out. In his mind, it was all about success and profit, with no room for emotional distractions. Confidently, he got into his car and headed towards the center of Chicago. The morning traffic was heavy, but Christopher, absorbed in his thoughts about the presentation he was going to give, barely noticed it. The main avenue was bustling with life, but in an instant, everything changed. A car coming from the opposite direction lost control, crashing head-on into Christopher's vehicle. The sound of screeching metal and shattering glass filled the air. Passers-by stopped, horrified, as Christopher's car lay wrecked in the middle of the street. Someone shouted for help, and soon a crowd gathered around the scene of the accident. "Call an ambulance, quick!" a voice exclaimed from the crowd. "There's someone trapped inside." Minutes seemed like hours as they waited for the emergency services. Christopher, unconscious and seriously injured, lay trapped in the wreckage of the car. The arrival of the ambulance brought a glimmer of hope. The paramedics worked swiftly and efficiently, managing to pull Christopher from the debris and rushing him to the nearest hospital. At the Chicago hospital, Amelia was in the thick of it, attending to her patients and coordinating with her colleagues. The day was progressing with its usual intensity when an urgent call came through. A patient in critical condition was being transferred immediately to the emergency room. Amelia, unaware that it was Christopher, prepared to receive the new patient. The medical team mobilized quickly. Amelia, with her usual professionalism, took control of the situation. As the ambulance arrived, the stretcher bearing the patient was rushed into the emergency room. Amelia began to give orders, not initially recognizing the seriously injured man in front of her. It was only when a colleague mentioned the patient's name that Amelia stopped dead in her tracks. "The patient is Christopher Rodriguez. He's in critical condition," said Natalie, her voice urgent. Amelia felt the ground disappear beneath her for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. "Come on, we need to stabilize him," Amelia said, her voice firm despite the lump in her throat. The operating room was ready. Amelia joined the surgical team, her heart pounding. The mix of emotions was overwhelming, but her professional commitment prevailed. Christopher, her Christopher, was fighting for his life, and she would do everything in her power to save him. The surgery was intense and full of critical moments. Amelia, with steady hands and a clear mind, assisted the surgeons, passing instruments and monitoring Christopher's vital signs. Every second was crucial. Every decision could mean the difference between life and death. Finally, after hours of tension, the surgery concluded. Christopher had survived, but his condition remained delicate. Amelia, exhausted but relieved, allowed herself a moment of weakness. Tears welled up in her eyes as she watched over Christopher, still unconscious, in the recovery room. "We did it, Christopher," Amelia whispered, gently squeezing his hand. "I'm going to be here with you no matter what." The hospital was shrouded in a solemn silence as the night wore on. Amelia, exhausted from the surgery and the emotions of the day, sat beside Christopher, who remained unconscious in his bed. His breathing was shallow but steady, and the monitors indicated that he was stable. Amelia hadn't left his side since he came out of the operating room. While going through Christopher's personal effects, she found his notebook, an object he always carried with him. With trembling hands, she opened it, perhaps searching for a message of hope or some indication of his thoughts before the accident. What she found, however, left her stunned. Among the pages filled with figures and business plans, there were detailed notes on how to convince her to quit her job. Christopher had planned to speak to the hospital director to have her fired, ensuring that she would have no choice but to stay at home. Amelia felt as if the air had become heavy and difficult to breathe. Every word written in that notebook was a stab to her heart. "How could you, Christopher?" she murmured to herself, closing the notebook tightly. Tears of pain and betrayal began to roll down her cheeks. For the past few days, she had given everything to save him, unaware that he had been plotting to destroy her career and her passion. 3 days after the surgery, Christopher began to show signs of recovery. His eyelids fluttered, and finally, he opened his eyes. The light in the room was blinding at first, but soon his eyes adjusted and recognized Amelia's figure beside him. He whispered, his voice weak. Her colleagues, especially Natalie, noticed the strain on her face and tried to offer support. "Amelia, I know this is hard," Natalie said one day while they were taking a short break in the staff room. "But you're doing an incredible job. You're one of the best nurses we have. Don't let anything or anyone make you doubt that." Natalie's words gave Amelia the strength she needed. She knew her calling and her love for nursing were an essential part of her identity, something even Christopher couldn't take away from her. With the support of her colleagues, she carried on, caring for Christopher with professionalism and dedication, while her heart slowly healed from the betrayal. Amidst Christopher's physical recovery, a new blow loomed over them, one that would drastically change their lives. One afternoon, as Amelia adjusted Christopher's IV, the room's phone rang. It was Vincent, Christopher's lawyer, with urgent news. "Amelia, I need to speak with Christopher. It's about his investments," said Vincent, his voice tense. Amelia, aware of Christopher's delicate condition, hesitated for a moment. "Vincent, I don't think this is the best time. Christopher is still recovering." "I know, but this can't wait," Vincent insisted. "It's crucial." With a sigh, Amelia held the phone close to Christopher, who barely had the strength to hold it. "What is it, Vincent?" murmured Christopher, his voice barely a whisper. Vincent took a deep breath before speaking. "Christopher, all your investments have failed. The projects you poured so much money into have collapsed. We've lost everything. The company is bankrupt." Christopher went silent, unable to process what he had just heard. His mind, already weakened from the accident, was filled with a mix of disbelief and despair. How could this happen?" he managed to say, his voice breaking. Amelia watched as Christopher's face crumbled. She felt a pang of pain and compassion, despite everything she had discovered in the previous days. She knew this was a crucial moment and that, despite her own feelings of betrayal, she had to be strong. "Vincent, I'm hanging up now. Christopher needs to rest," Amelia said firmly before putting the phone away. She approached Christopher and took his hand. "We'll get through this, Christopher. Somehow, we'll find a solution." Christopher closed his eyes, letting out a shaky sigh. "I've failed at everything, Amelia. Not just my investments, but our relationship too. I don't know what to do." Amelia felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Despite her anger and pain, she couldn't abandon Christopher in his time of need. "You're not alone, Christopher. We're still here. But we need time to heal and understand each other better." In the following weeks, Amelia decided to use all of her savings to help Christopher. It was a difficult decision, but she knew she couldn't let him fall even further. Meanwhile, the tensions and emotional wounds between them remained present, but Amelia stood firm in her resolve. Every day at the hospital, Amelia continued to care for Christopher with dedication, while her colleagues, especially Natalie, offered their constant support. "You're incredible, Amelia," Natalie told her one day as they rested in the staff room. "Your strength and compassion are an example to us all." "Thank you, Natalie. Sometimes I feel like I'm on the verge of collapsing, but I have to keep going. I can't abandon Christopher now, even though everything is so complicated," Amelia replied, her voice reflecting the mix of determination and fatigue. Christopher's financial situation worsened, but Amelia refused to give up. She knew the adversities they faced were monumental, but she also knew that her love for nursing and her commitment to her patients gave her the strength to keep fighting. Although she felt betrayed by Christopher and by the circumstances, she refused to let discouragement overcome her. Days passed slowly in the intensive care unit of the Chicago hospital. Christopher showed signs of improvement, but the shadow of bankruptcy continued to weigh on him. His physical wounds were healing, but the pain of financial losses and the collapse of his company kept him in a constant state of dejection. Amelia was always by his side, caring for him with the same dedication and love she had shown from day one. However, the economic reality was beginning to become unsustainable. Her savings, painstakingly accumulated over the years, were rapidly depleting. With each passing day, the financial pressure increased. One afternoon, as Amelia reviewed the accounts in her small notebook, a knot of worry formed in her stomach. The costs of Christopher's treatment were high, and although she had been using all her resources, she knew that soon she would not be able to continue covering the expenses. With a heavy sigh, she turned to Natalie, who was in the staff break room. "Natalie, I don't know how much longer I can handle this. My savings are running out, and I have no idea how I'm going to keep paying the hospital bills," Amelia confessed, her voice filled with worry. Natalie placed a hand on her shoulder and offered a supportive smile. "Amelia, everyone here has seen your dedication and love for Christopher. You're not alone in this. I'll talk to the team and see what we can do." What Amelia didn't expect was the overwhelming response from her colleagues and the community. The story of her sacrifice and struggle had spread throughout the hospital and beyond. Doctors, nurses, and other hospital workers began to contribute, organizing a fundraising campaign to help with Christopher's medical expenses. The news spread quickly, and soon donations arrived from people across the city, moved by the story of Amelia and Christopher. One day, while Amelia was walking through the hospital corridors, she received an envelope with a note and several checks. The note read, "For Amelia and Christopher, with all our support and admiration, the Chicago hospital community." Tears of gratitude welled up in Amelia's eyes. She was overwhelmed by the kindness and generosity of everyone. "Thank you. Thank you all," she murmured, holding the envelope close to her heart. Meanwhile, Christopher began to notice the change in the atmosphere around him. Amelia's constant presence and the unwavering support of the community made him reflect on his own mistakes and priorities. In moments of solitude, he thought about everything Amelia had sacrificed for him and how he had underestimated her work and dedication. One day, as Amelia adjusted his pillow, Christopher looked at her with a mixture of sadness and gratitude. "Amelia, I can never thank you enough for everything you've done for me. I've been a fool not to value what you do. I've seen how much your work and the people you care for mean to you." Amelia stopped and looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of emotions. "Christopher, the important thing is that you're alive and you're here. But you have to understand that my work is an essential part of who I am. I can't and won't give that up." Christopher nodded slowly, finally understanding the depth of Amelia's words. "I know, and I promise I'll do everything I can to support you and respect your decisions from now on." One quiet afternoon, as the sun streamed through the windows of the hospital room, Amelia decided it was time to have a crucial conversation with Christopher. She knew they couldn't keep avoiding the issue and that it needed to be confronted in order to move forward. "Christopher, we need to talk," Amelia said, sitting on the edge of his bed. Her eyes sought his, full of determination but also a deep sadness. Christopher nodded, ready to hear what Amelia had to say. "I know, Amelia. I've been doing a lot of thinking myself. Amelia took a deep breath before continuing. I can't give up my work. It's an essential part of who I am. Helping people, being there for them in their most difficult moments, is something that gives me life and purpose. I need you to understand that. Christopher looked at her with a mixture of understanding and pain. I do understand, Amelia. I've seen how much you mean to your patients and your colleagues, and I was a fool not to appreciate it before. Amelia nodded, feeling a small spark of hope. But there's something else. I think we need time apart. Not because I don't love you, but because I think we both need space to grow and understand ourselves better. You need time to discover who you are and what you really value. Christopher was silent for a moment, processing Amelia's words. Finally, he spoke, his voice shaky but firm. Amelia, I know I've made a lot of mistakes, but I'm willing to change. I want to learn to be a better person, and, above all, I want to be a better partner to you. Amelia smiled sadly, her eyes welling up with tears. I know you do, Christopher. But this is a path you have to walk yourself. I can't do it for you. You need to find your own way, and so do I. The following days were filled with goodbyes and reflections. Amelia prepared to leave the apartment they shared, packing her belongings with care. Christopher watched her silently, his heart heavy with sadness, but also filled with a new determination. Amelia, I promise I'll do everything I can to change. When we meet again, I'll be a different man, Christopher said, his voice full of sincerity. Amelia hugged him, feeling a mixture of relief and pain. I hope so, Christopher. I wish you all the best, and I hope you find what you're looking for. The farewell was painful, but necessary. Amelia knew that true love couldn't be based on coercion or dependence, but on mutual respect and understanding. As she closed the apartment door for the last time, she felt stronger and more sure of herself. Christopher, for his part, was left alone in the apartment, reflecting on everything that had happened. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he also knew it was an opportunity to rediscover himself and become the person Amelia deserved. In the months following their separation, both Amelia and Christopher embarked on paths of personal and professional growth. Amelia, with her unwavering dedication and passion for nursing, was promoted to nursing supervisor at the Chicago hospital. This new position not only recognized her talent and effort, but also allowed her to help more patients and improve the hospital's practices. Every day, Amelia arrived at the hospital early, ready to face any challenge. Her commitment and skill were admired by her colleagues and superiors. Amelia, your leadership and compassion inspire everyone here, the hospital director told her during a meeting. We're very proud to have you on our team. Meanwhile, Natalie, Amelia's best friend, was also advancing in her career. Thanks to her experience and the lessons learned alongside Amelia, Natalie was appointed coordinator of the training program for new nurses. Her goal was to pass on the knowledge and passion that Amelia had instilled in her to the next generation of healthcare professionals. I want our new nurses to see you as a role model, Amelia, Natalie said one day as they had coffee in the break room. Your dedication and empathy are qualities that everyone should aspire to. Amelia smiled, grateful for her friend's words. Thank you, Natalie. It means a lot to me to know that I'm making a difference. Christopher, on the other hand, had begun to rebuild his life from scratch. With the support of his friend and lawyer Vincent, he got involved in small projects and began to return to the financial world with a renewed focus. He had learned to value humility and compassion, and he was determined to apply those principles in his new life. One afternoon, while reviewing some documents in his office, Christopher had an idea. Remembering all that Amelia had done for him and the importance of her work at the hospital, he decided to invest in improving the facilities of the Chicago hospital. He wanted to contribute to a place that had meant so much to both of them. "Vincent, I want to make a significant investment in the Chicago hospital," Christopher said during a meeting. "I want to help improve the facilities and make sure they have everything they need to continue providing excellent care." Vincent looked at him approvingly. "That's a great idea, Christopher. It'll be a way to give back and also show how much you've changed." News of Christopher's investment quickly reached the hospital. Amelia, surprised and moved, watched as the improvements began to transform the place where she worked. New equipment, renovated rooms, and additional resources made a tangible difference. One day, while walking through the hospital corridors, Amelia stopped in front of a commemorative plaque that recognized Christopher's generous donation. Her heart filled with a mixture of gratitude and hope. She knew that this gesture was a testament to the profound change Christopher had undergone. The lives of Amelia and Christopher had taken different paths, but both had found ways to grow and contribute positively to their surroundings. As time passed, both knew that the future was still being written, but now they faced it with an understanding and maturity that only adversity could forge. Time had passed, and both Amelia and Christopher had come a long way in their journeys of growth and transformation. Although their lives had taken different directions, each had found a way to contribute positively to their community and rediscover themselves. One sunny morning in Chicago, Amelia received a letter in her mailbox. It was an invitation to a special event at the hospital, organized to thank all the benefactors who had contributed to the recent improvements. As she reviewed the list of donors, Amelia saw Christopher's name prominently displayed. Her heart skipped a beat as she read it, recognizing all the sacrifice and dedication he had put into supporting the place that meant so much to her. On the day of the event, Amelia dressed with care and headed to the hospital, where a crowd had gathered to celebrate. The hospital's facilities looked renewed and full of life, a testament to the joint effort of all those who had contributed. As she walked down the halls, Amelia ran into Natalie, who smiled upon seeing her. "Amelia, are you ready for the big moment?" Natalie asked excitedly. "Yes, more than ever," replied Amelia, trying to maintain her composure as her mind raced with thoughts of Christopher. The event was held in the hospital auditorium, where speakers thanked the donors for their generosity. When it was Christopher's turn to speak, the atmosphere was filled with anticipation. Christopher took the stage and began to speak, his voice calm and full of sincerity. "We are here today to celebrate not only the improvements in this hospital, but also the spirit of collaboration and mutual support that has allowed us to get this far. Throughout this journey, I have learned the importance of humility, compassion, and respect. I have seen firsthand the positive impact we can have when we work together for the common good." Amelia, watching from the back of the auditorium, felt a wave of pride and gratitude. Christopher's words resonated deeply within her heart. After the speech, the attendees began to disperse, but Amelia remained still, waiting for an opportunity to talk to him. Christopher, upon leaving the stage, saw Amelia in the crowd and approached her slowly. Their eyes met, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. "Amelia," Christopher said with a soft smile, "it's good to see you here." "You too, Christopher. You've done something incredible for the hospital." "Thank you," Amelia replied, her eyes shining with emotion. Christopher nodded, taking a deep breath. "I knew how much this place means to you. I wanted to do something that would truly make a difference." Amelia smiled, feeling a renewed connection between them. "You've succeeded. I'm very proud of you." The two decided to walk through a nearby park, reminiscing about the moments that had brought them to this point. The conversation flowed naturally, every word laden with the understanding and respect they had learned to cultivate. Finally, they arrived at the Enamorados Café, the place where they had first met. They sat at the same table, smiling at the coincidence. "It seems we've come full circle," Amelia said, looking around. "Yes, and I feel like it's the beginning of something new," Christopher replied, taking her hand. As they looked to the future, both knew their relationship had been strengthened by the trials and tribulations they had faced. They had learned to value love, dedication, and the importance of respecting each other's passions and dreams. The journey of Amelia and Christopher is a profound and moving narrative that highlights the importance of personal growth and mutual understanding in relationships. From the beginning, Amelia is shown as a strong and dedicated woman, passionate about her work as a nurse, while Christopher is presented as a successful man, but initially unable to value the importance of Amelia's work. Throughout the story, both characters face monumental challenges that force them to re-evaluate their priorities and values. Christopher's transformation is particularly striking. From the fall of his company to his decision to invest in the hospital, his evolution reflects a growing understanding of humility and empathy. Amelia, on the other hand, remains steadfast in her convictions, demonstrating that true love is not about unilateral sacrifices, but about mutual support and respect. The central message of the story is clear. Personal growth and genuine love require time, patience, and above all, the willingness to change and understand the other person. The relationship between Amelia and Christopher, based on personal evolution and mutual support, teaches us that true relationships flourish when both partners are willing to grow together, facing challenges with courage and compassion. If you found the characters' journeys inspiring, please like and comment to share your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more uplifting stories that highlight the power of connection and human kindness. Thank you for watching.